My hair has got so long. Quarantine is not doing me any favours. Hey guys, it's Izzy, and in today's video we're going to be doing something a little bit different. It is Disability Pride Month this month, as well as Lesbian Pride Month, so it's double pride, I guess. And I am disabled and chronically ill, and I just really wanted to kind of do a video talking about my experience with disability. I'll leave the video in the cards that I did about my actual chronic illness and like everything that's wrong with me from like a medical point of view. It's like I made it simple, it's not like a medical textbook. But if you want to know kind of like more about why I'm disabled and what I suffer from, then you can check that video out first. But yeah, I kind of just wanted to do a video. I asked for questions on Twitter to just see what people kind of wanted to know about what it's like being disabled and my experience being disabled. So yeah, that's what we're going to do in this video. We'll be back to our regular scheduled book videos after this, don't worry. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of educate and, you know, share some disability pride, I guess. So I think we're mainly just going to go off the questions because those are good like prompts for me. And that is, when people see you, would you rather they ask you about your disability or just not say anything at all? Which is a good question. And just a quick disclaimer before I answer these questions, I am only speaking from my experience as a disabled person, and although I do interact with the disability community, and I know that my general opinions are kind of the opinions of a majority of disabled people, this definitely does not apply to all disabled people. I am not the voice of every disabled person ever. So yeah, just wanted to put that out there. These answers don't apply to everyone, so please just kind of, you know, think about the situation that you're in and if these questions are appropriate to ask or not. But to be honest, I would rather people ask what's wrong with me. There's a distinction. If it's like a stranger or someone I'm not like trying to create a friendship or relationship with, then it's like, why would it be your business? Because it's like, I mean, I am like visibly disabled. I kind of had an invisible illness up until age 13. Which was when I started using crutches and then a wheelchair, and I'm 21 now, so I've been in a wheelchair for 8 years. For most of those years I've been an ambulatory wheelchair user, which means that you can walk, but a lot of the time you need like extra help, or some of the time it doesn't have to be, you know, some people can walk like pretty far, but if they need like a whole day out, they can't manage, and so then they would take a wheelchair if they were gonna have a whole day out. And for me, I could walk around the house, but I couldn't walk outside. And now I'm a full-time wheelchair user. I can't walk at all now. So yeah, I have been visibly disabled for quite a long time, so people can like quite easily identify that I am disabled or chronically ill. But like, you wouldn't walk up to like a regular person, like a regular standing up person, and ask for like their medical history. So like, if you're not gonna be part of my life, then you don't really need to know. But if it's like someone I'm meeting for the first time who's going to be a friend or a teacher or a doctor or really any kind of relationship, then I would much rather people ask. I think when people try and like not ask and like be what they think is like chill about it, really they just like stare at you and just kind of like, you can just tell they want to know, which is fine. Like, people are curious, and if I'm gonna, know these people in the future, then I just rather get it out on the table and just kind of give like a brief overview of my condition and how that affects me, because I don't know, it's a part of me, and so I don't have any problem explaining it. It is case by case, but for me, I'd rather just let people know what's up. Next question is, how do you deal with internalized ableism / judging yourself to the standard of able-bodied people? I would love to answer this question and say I'm good at it. It's a work in progress for sure. Like I said, I've been like pretty unwell since I was 11, so 10 years now. And before that, I was I was at school and stuff, but I wasn't like super well. But I was like okay until 11, and then my health really went downhill. Again, you can check out my video. And I was an overachiever. I am an overachiever. I wanted to be top of the class at everything. And I was, because I don't know, that's what I thought was like the goal in life, to be the most intelligent. Intelligence is something that's really key to me and is really just like part of my personality, because I just love learning and curiosity and just kind of knowing as much as physically possible about like every subject ever. I just love learning, and it has been really difficult to still enjoy learning and school, and also realise that I'm never going to be able to compete with able-bodied people, and that really I should only judge myself against myself and just strive for the best that I can do. And I'm definitely not perfect at that at all. In fact, I'm really not that great at it. I know it. I know that I shouldn't compare myself, but you do. Everyone compares themselves to everyone else, and I have struggled with kind of wanting to keep learning as something that's core to my personality, and also realizing that my learning now is very different to what other people can do, but I just have to do it in my own way, and that's just how it is. I mean, I did 6 GCSEs when I was 16, and that was a year after full spinal surgery. I was on a lot of meds. I came through with 3 A stars, 2 A's and a B, and I actually don't know how, because I was not with it when I took those exams, and I still get frustrated that I got like a B, because I know like I could have done better if I was well enough. And so I think there's those frustrations when you know you have more capability than what you could achieve, and kind of it's your physical that's your physical body that's kind of stopping you from reaching those potentials. But I've definitely struggled with that. I would like to say that I don't have internal ableism, but it's something I definitely still struggle with. And I don't know, I think it's just tragically a thing we all do. We all compare ourselves to another person. But yeah, I do still compare myself to other people. In fact, I more compare myself to other disabled people. I'm like, they can do it, I should be able to do it, which is not true. We're all disabled in different ways. You can only do what you can do. So the answer to this question is you shouldn't judge yourself against anyone but yourself, and you can only do your best, and that's more than good enough, and it's good to even try. My answer is it's a work in progress. The next question is, how did you react / feel when you were diagnosed, or if you've always known when you had a life-altering change in your disability? I know for me, I had a lot of unexpected feelings getting diagnosed. This is a good question, and something that is definitely, I feel, very personal, based on like your experience, like pre-diagnosis and post-diagnosis. And yeah, so in my experience, I do have a genetic condition, so technically I've been like ill since birth, and I needed help when I was younger to learn how to walk and kind of do those things. So, like, my parents were always aware that I had difficulties with milestones, and I was always kind of the last to reach any physical milestones. I could talk through England, but I could not walk. And yeah, so my parents were always kind of aware that I was a bit different. But up until age 11, I kind of like just got by, and we kind of just knew that was me, and everyone everyone just be like, "Oh, that's Izzy," and yeah, no one really thought more about it. And then when I was 11, a series of events caused my body to kind of just shut down a bit. And from then on, it's just continued, and I've just got more and more um, diagnosis diagnoses. What is the plural of diagnosis? Diagnoses? Plural diagnosis. Honestly, I hate myself. Anyway, so from age 11 till 13, I actually was wrongly diagnosed. I was originally diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome, and after a couple of years, my physio, my wonderful physio, just realised that the symptoms of that condition were just not adding up with how my condition was presenting. And then when I was 13, I went to Great Ormond Street, and they diagnosed me with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is my diagnosis currently. And when I was 13, it was more of a relief, because we just, like, me, my mom, my dad, my sister, we were all just kind of like, that makes so much more sense, because it really matched up more with my way of presenting and what, the kind of assistance I needed. So although that's kind of obviously not a great thing to be diagnosed with something that's, going to be with you your entire life, but at that stage it really just was like, oh, yeah, that totally makes way more sense. And so that was kind of like a relief. And to be honest, most of my diagnosis experiences, I mean, I've got like 13 different diagnoses. Again, check out my other video. And a lot of the time it's been relieving, because it's like, that explains my symptoms, that explains what I've been experiencing, and now we can kind of like look at it and try and treat it in the best way that we can. And so it's kind of a bittersweet thing, because it's like, you've been diagnosed with something that can, well, in my case, will be with me all my life, and in some cases are untreatable. So in that way, it is very difficult to deal with, and I do believe that every time you get a diagnosis, you do have to go through a grieving cycle. I think most people think like a grieving cycle only happens when you lose a loved one, but actually, what I've learned through my many years of therapy is that every time I kind of lose the ability to do something, or I gain a diagnosis that is really going to impact my life, I have to go through a cycle of feeling angry, feeling frustrated, feeling sad, feeling all those kind of emotions before feeling kind of like not comfortable with it, but before feeling like, okay, this is my new reality. And so I've had to do that a lot of times, and I definitely don't just like feel relief and that's it, because a lot of the time my diagnoses are really not great ones. And although when I first get them, I'm like, oh, that makes sense, thank you, you finally believe what I'm going through. And then there's other times where it's like, damn it, that's not great. So yeah, it really is a mixed bag. I mean, getting my diagnosis of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome was on the whole just like relief, because I was like, thank God someone actually understands what I'm going through. But then there's been other diagnoses, like for instance, I had spinal surgery to fuse my spine due to scoliosis, which is a bend in the spine, and I was fused T4 to L4. If that means anything to you. So it was major surgery, and then after that, my spine started to collapse above the fusion, and I developed proximal junctional kyphosis. Again, watch my video, but basically it means my head is like being pushed off my spine, and so my spine bends forwards, and that can endanger my spinal cord. And if I was to have surgery, I would be fused from the base of my spine to my skull, so I wouldn't be able to move my head. They can't do that because I'm too ill, but really the only choices with that diagnosis is being fused to the skull or living with an intense amount of pain that it brings. And that was a really hard diagnosis to deal with, because it was kind of a like, you've got this thing wrong with you, but we can't really do anything about it. Same with below my spine, I developed scoliosis in like the 3 vertebrae that weren't fused, as well as developing arthritis, and I have spinal root cysts. Again, would only be able to be treated with surgery. I'm not well enough for surgery. So again, it's kind of like, oh, that explains why all these things happen to me, but you can't treat it. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of variation depending on your diagnosis. I know some people take almost decades to get the correct diagnosis, and for them it's just such like a weight off their shoulders, because like finally someone understands and someone knows what this is, what is happening to me. Whereas for me, I was lucky enough to be diagnosed pretty early on, and so I hadn't, been waiting a super long time. But yeah, diagnosis is weird, and every time is different. You don't get used to it. It's still, I think people think like kind of like after you've got one diagnosis, you're like professional at it. That is unfortunately not the case. The next question is, I'm assuming that people assume being disabled is meaning unable to do a lot in life. What have you found you can do that people who don't have a disability can do? Good question. I definitely have had a very negative experience with my chronic illness, just because it has made me so ill, and I've gotten to the point where I'm like completely bedbound and in a lot of pain. But that's from my chronic illness. I am disabled, I use a wheelchair, and that doesn't really bother me. Able-bodied people think being in a wheelchair is like the worst thing that can ever happen to you, and most people who I've met who are in wheelchairs, it's just like my legs but different. It's just like a different version of legs. So it really doesn't bother me that much. And I think the 2 main things that I've improved at during being chronically ill is, 1, I'm really good at adapting. I have to get real creative with how to do the things I need to do with the limitations that I have. And I definitely think that is something you kind of learn after a decade of being disabled. You have to learn to adapt, and I think I do a pretty good job of continually adapting to my changing needs, and that's something I'm definitely like proud of because I can think outside the box, that's for sure. And the second thing is just empathy. I think people go about their lives and they never really think about other people and maybe what they're going through, and kind of putting themselves in their shoes, in someone else's shoes. And I think I spend a lot of time thinking about what other people's journey is and the effects that that has on them. It's why I love reading so much, because I love to read about people's experiences and different lives from my own. I love to read books about what it's like being black, police brutality. I read so many queer books to understand the full queer experience, and I just want to learn so much about so many different people, because I just know that everyone is, fighting a different battle and having a different journey, and I just think that people don't take the time to genuinely think about the impact that an event can have on people's lives, whether it's assault, police brutality, family rejection, family members dying, etc., 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 and that ability to be able to put myself in other people's shoes and to kind of then share that with the people around me. My best friend, Katie, who's also disabled, she has a YouTube channel. I'll leave it down below. She's the most brilliant person in the world, and when she was in the hospital for a very long time, she started a charity when she was like 13, Cards for Bravery, where she sends cards to sick kids in hospital. And again, she kind of like looked at her experience and thought about what would make her life better, and then shared it with so many people. And she's just so incredible. And not many 13-year-olds start a charity. So that's another example of the way that we then get to view the world can help other people. So yeah, next question is, what is your relation to the label disability? As someone struggling to accept, I'd be interested in your journey with it. Again, another great question. I have had difficulty with that word, but mainly just because able-bodied people frame it as such a terrible word. I remember for so many years family members would never refer to me as being disabled, despite being in a wheelchair and having, like a blue badge to park where I need, and having a wheelchair accessible vehicle, and, having all the things that kind of give the label, I guess, of being disabled. And still, it took years and years for, like, extended family to ever refer to me with that word. And it always kind of made me feel weird, because I was like, it's just like an adjective to me. Like, I am disabled, I'm in a wheelchair, that means I can't do things that able-bodied people can do. So it's just like a way of describing me, and I feel really comfortable using the word disabled and disability now. And it definitely was a journey. I think from like ages 11 to probably like 16 I struggled with it, and since then I'm like perfectly okay with it. I just think that able-bodied people do really make it such like this big word, and they're like, oh my god, can I call her disabled? And I'm like referring to myself as disabled, and people are still like, but is she disabled? And I'm like, yes. Like, literally, I couldn't be more clearly disabled if I tried. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying anyone else's experience with the word disabled, it doesn't mean you have to be in a wheelchair, it doesn't mean, you have to have all these visible signs. But I'm like, if you can't call me disabled, who can you call disabled? Because I am just so very clearly disabled. And yeah, I do find it almost amusing how much able people find that word, like, they think it's like a swear word, I swear to God. Like, honestly, this is a PSA to every able-bodied person out there. If a person refers to them as disabled, you can also refer to them as disabled. It's just it's just a fact. I am disabled. Like, you haven't shattered my world by referring to me as disabled. So, there you go. End of PSA. You can call me that. It's fine. I'm not going to go home and cry. But I think it's perfectly valid that everyone who is disabled don't have to use that label or identity. And if someone doesn't, and if you know someone who doesn't use that label and doesn't refer to themselves as being disabled, I would suggest not referring to them as disabled. It's kind of like with in the LGBT community, some people feel comfortable referring to themselves as queer, and some people find that label really upsetting. So if you hear someone referring to themselves as queer, then you can kind of take that as like, you can also refer to that. But if you hear someone referring to themselves as a lesbian or as gay or bisexual, and like, then don't call them queer. It's pretty easy. Just kind of take the lead from the person that you're dealing with, and they'll let you know what they're comfortable with. But yeah, I really do feel for everyone who struggles with that term, because it is made to seem like such a big deal, and it is made to seem like this really awful thing. And there are way worse things in life than being disabled, and being a wheelchair user or a crutch user or a cane user or any of those things. Yeah, I really hope that you get to a point where you feel comfortable with that label, because at the end of the day, it doesn't define you, but it is a part of you, and it is just a word to describe a fact about you. And I think it's made into a much bigger thing than it needs to be. It's just a word, okay? Okay, guys, you can call me it. Another question is, what's your favourite thing about being disabled? Again, empathy. That's my favourite thing. Honestly, I've lived with a chronic illness that kept me bedridden for years. I always had trouble being productive and coping while in that state. Do videos/reading or anything help you push through? Also, I love following someone else with a disability. In some weird way, it makes me feel less alone. If I had a flare-up and can't film because of pain, I always felt guilty, because I felt like my subscribers don't understand my illness, but I know I'm not alone in this community. And just first of all, I'm so glad you're part of my community too. It can be very isolating, it can feel like no one understands you, it can feel like you're kind of screaming into a void, because people continually leave disability out of the conversation when it comes to minorities. The first thing is race, sexuality, and obviously those people are still oppressed and still really, struggling, but I get really frustrated with how often disability is left out of the conversation, and it almost feels like that people like don't even remember we're there. And I understand that loneliness and that kind of feeling that it's just you and a void. But just, if any of you are disabled and need someone to talk to, or just need someone to feel like you're not on your own, please just DM me on Twitter, Instagram, wherever, and I'll try my best to get back to you, because I know how lonely it can feel. But yes, booktube has been a lifesaver for me this past year. I've had steadily decreasing health in the past year, and I've been bedbound for 5 months now, like fully bedbound. And if you're still wondering, that's why I film from my bed. But it's been such a focus for me. It's been such a community for me. There's friends and there's so much joy and excitement. It's just given me so much, and I just love actually being able to produce something that people actually enjoy, because prior to that I kind of felt like everything I did was kind of just for me, and it seemed less valuable, even though that's not true. But booktube has just been incredible for me, and I'm so thankful for everyone who supported me so far. But I think at the end of the day, you know how much you can do, and no one can make you do more than that. And sure, people might not understand, but you have to do what's best for you. If you can't do something, that's okay. It's okay to not be okay. It's okay to be, to think for 2 weeks, I literally can do no more than survive. I've had a lot of those weeks where it's just like, I just have to get through the day. And that's fine. You're doing the best you can, and the people who want to see you and want to interact with you and want to be part of your community will be waiting for you when you get back, and those are the people you want there anyway. So yeah, just do it, because it brings something for you, it brings joy for you, it brings purpose for you, it brings productivity for you, it brings distraction for you, any of those things. Just make sure you're doing it for you. And if you can't make a video for 1 week, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, that's just the way life is. And people take breaks from making videos for no reason. So if you're like literally in excruciating pain and can't even like move, I think it's a pretty good reason to not make a video. Like, it's fine. And if anyone judges you, just send it my way and I'll give them a piece of my mind. You're welcome. Next question is, how do you keep your spirits up and how do you maintain your emotional health? And that is through antidepressants and a lot of therapy. I currently have therapy twice a week because my brain has pieced out. I'm not as comfortable talking about my mental health with everyone, just because it's like very personal, and like kind of why I've developed my the mental health that I have is very personal, and they're very personal experiences, and a lot of them are traumatic, and so I just don't like to discuss them. Also, another PSA, if someone suffers from trauma, PTSD, anything like that, please don't ask them why. It's called trauma or post-traumatic stress disorder. The word trauma is there. That means we relive it enough in flashbacks, we relive it enough in therapy, and we are not going to make ourselves ill explaining to you why we have trauma, okay? So that's just a no. Unless you're getting married, don't ask someone why they have trauma. So yeah, maintaining my emotional health is helped with drugs and a very patient therapist. And I've been in therapy since I was 11. And 10 years later, we're still going because my brain's a hot mess. But yeah, I suffer from depression, anxiety, panic attacks, trauma, PTSD, etc. So it's fun in my brain. I think I was really afraid for a long time of taking medication for my mental health, and I really just kind of was like, I should be able to handle this, like I should be able to do this myself, like I should be able to do this through therapy, like I don't need drugs, like I can handle this. And if anyone's feeling the same at the moment, I really just want to say, like, your life will be so much better with those medications, and you're not failing by taking them. You're just actually being really brave and vulnerable and realizing that you can't do everything by yourself and you do need help, and that's perfectly fine. Just whether it's mental health or disability, physical disability, I really just want to say that it's okay to ask for help. You don't have to be strong all the time. You don't have to be like, I think we always are kind of trying to prove to able-bodied people that we can do it without their help, and we can do everything that they can do, and we're just as valuable members of society, and that we're just the strongest people in the world, which we are. I have so many incredible, inspiring people in my life who are disabled or chronically ill, and they are by far the best people I know. And I've never met a disabled person who isn't kind, who isn't empathetic, who isn't supportive, who isn't, we've been through hell and back for most of us, and that makes us really strong, and that makes us really good friends, and that makes us just good people. And it's almost rewarding yourself by saying, you know what, if this drug is going to make me feel better, I deserve that. So whether it's an antidepressant, a painkiller, whatever, if you're trying to prove that you can cope without it, you don't have to prove to anyone. No one's going to give you a medal and say, well done for not taking that medication, but you might be able to get your own medal by being able to do stuff because you took that medication. So, yeah, no shame around medication in this house. I take about 6 billion medications, so I'm a professional. So, yeah, those were all the questions I got. And yeah, I think I've answered most of them to the best of my abilities. Again, I'm not the spokesperson for every disabled person in the world, so please just keep that in mind, that what might be comfortable for one disabled person can be really uncomfortable for another. Just finally, what I wanted to kind of touch on is people trying to invalidate disability because it's not their idea of what disability should be. I see so often people saying, like, I mean, I've been called these things, and I've seen many other people being called these things, like being called a faker or lazy, or you're just not trying hard enough, or you're doing this for attention, or just an endless barrage of all the horrible things you can say to a disabled person. Just remember that no one gets to define who a disabled person is. Not every disabled person is in a wheelchair or paralysed. There are so many different illnesses and disabilities that someone can have. I have a ton of them. But just because you can't see how much someone is suffering doesn't mean they're not suffering. My pain isn't visible to you, but it doesn't mean it's not there. I can assure you it's there. And I just think that every disabled person is valid, whether their disability is visible or not. And I just really hope more and more people feel comfortable with labelling themselves as disabled and kind of reclaiming that word for themselves. And I hope able-bodied people get the memo that I have so many things wrong with me, and it's not because I'm lazy or an attention seeker or a faker. that's what I have to say to that. I hate people that do that, and I think it's just because, like, if I can achieve like things in this state, yes, it makes them feel kind of insecure that they can't achieve in their fully able body. So, but yeah, this Disability Pride Month, send a message to your disabled friend. Tell them they're great. Tell them they're valued. Tell them you love them. And yeah, I hope this has been informative. I hope if you are disabled, you feel comforted and less alone. And if you're able-bodied, I hope you've learned something about kind of what it's like to have the disabled experience, the VIP disabled experience. And like I said, if you would like to know more about my medical conditions, the video I did is here. And yeah, I think that's everything. I feel like this was kind of rambly, and I hope it made sense. I will leave my best friend Katie's channel down below, and I will leave a couple other disabled booktubers and creators down in the description box. Follow disabled people this month, please. Just as you put effort into following Black creators and queer creators, which we all should, I would really appreciate if you put just as much energy into supporting and uplifting disabled voices. So, yes, if you have any questions, you can leave them down in the comments. I promise I won't be offended. I mean, I made this video because I can deal with most questions now, and I kind of want to use my, I guess, experience and my time with being disabled to kind of answer questions so that people who are kind of newer to this experience don't have to answer all of them. And please share this video and send it to someone. If they ask you a question then you don't want to answer it, send them here. And yeah, I'd really appreciate it if you gave this video some love. Also, if you make videos, please close caption them. It really doesn't take long, and as a partially deaf person, it would be very much appreciated. A lot of people cannot access your videos if they are not captioned, and it really doesn't take that much time, and I think it's worth putting in that effort so people can enjoy your content. Thank you. I know I say this as my videos aren't closed captioned, but it's because I'm deaf and I can't hear myself, so the closed captions would be useless because I can't hear what I'm saying, so great. I've rambled on long enough. You can follow me on my Bookstagram, Twitter and Goodreads, which are all linked in the description box. And yeah, that's all I have to say for today. I might make another one of these videos again in a couple months just because there's a lot to say, and this is only like 5% of the disabled experience. So yes, thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful rest of the day, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!